Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at Great Stag Knights. How good they are and how they will be used in multiplayer. Of course, people already have ideas about that because the patch has been out for a while now. So this was a battle which was actually the first time where I used these Great Stag Knights. Let's first look at their stats. So they're very fast shock cavalry, which is kind of like Wild Riders, but it has fewer models, and of course, big difference as well is that it has armor-piercing damage, so it's sort of comparable to the Blade Singers compared to War Dancers, so very similar unit, but the one has armor-piercing and the other doesn't. That's kind of the biggest difference. Now, this is a bit of an awkward matchup and an awkward build. It's Wood Elves against Britonia, which is a matchup that, well, has been among Wood Elves' worst matchups for a long time, but of course this was the new patch. I did just make up a build very quickly in the lobby though, because this was a battle from my stream that I was playing live and streaming live, and I believe it was Romulan Dog who wanted to see the beautiful Great Stag Knights, so I picked 3 of these bad boys, put 4,500 gold into them, and I knew, okay, this is the units that are going to either win or lose me the battle. So to buff them up a little bit, I picked Orion, who can also help them out in fights. He is of course anti-large, can throw spears at people, as he's doing here. Let's see if he hits someone. Yeah, I think he hit the guy in the back there. Yep, and down he goes. Flop. Rest in peace, that guy. Seems to get crushed under his horse as well. Orion with those throwing spears, definitely no joke. Okay, let's focus on the Great Stag Knight. So my idea here was to just rush the Britonians and then force a cav fight with the Great Stag Knights, get that charge bonus in, get a pendulum in, get the healing in, get Orion in there, kill the cavalry and just go from there, which was a bit of a risky ploy, but yeah, as I approach this battle, I see the way this guy set up his army with multiple lines of infantry, some of them battle pilgrims, just a 1 archer, so it's quite a meaty army, and a lot of cavalry in these Knights of the Realm and Knights Errant. Luckily no Grail Knights, because Grail Knights, they would of course crush Great Stag Knights, they would pierce the physical resistance that they have with their magic attacks quite well, so that was a bit lucky for me that he didn't bring those units. But he has a mass of cavalry regardless, so I figure just rushing into this may not be the best idea. So, and this guy also responds quite quickly with his cavalry. He sees these dryads coming, sends in his cavalry, and if my cavalry wasn't so fast, my dryads would have received a charge there, but you can see he's pulling back his cavalry because he sees the stags coming, and because they have 90 speed, it's so easy to quickly reposition them to where they need to be, which is already a massive advantage that they have. So now I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to approach this? How am I going to get the fight that I want with the Stag Knights? Because keep in mind, this is the first time I'm using them, or was the first time I was using them, and so I didn't really know like how well they would perform in these fights against other cavalry. The opponent throws down an Earthblood, misses this unit. It's best to always make sure you hit the max amount of targets with your Earthblood, otherwise you're only getting a third of the spell or less. So yeah, I'm just poking away at his knights as I'm trying to form a different battle plan. My army is pretty one-dimensional, so can't really do much, but I'm just trying to be as annoying as possible with the Hawk Riders, trying to focus down the cavalry because it's really going to decide the game. Meanwhile, my opponents send some sneaky cavalry around the side here, the Knights Errant, Knights of the Realm sort of wrapping around as the infantry approaches, and the Paladins move to deal with these Hawk Riders. So this army, despite not having Grail Knights, is not too far off from what I would consider a meta build, to be honest. Like, it has the Paladins, it has the Fae, it has the infantry, just the cavalry selection, and then yeah, the small amount of archers is something that's a little bit different. So here I use the Stag Knights, I want to charge and clear up the peasant mobs. Now the reason for that is peasant mobs They're not really important, but they could catch that first charge from the Dryads. And of course Dryads don't have much charge, but I'm going to use Orion with his horn. And so I want that charge to hit his proper units and not the peasants, so I want to get rid of them. And you can see the Stag Knights with just one charge quickly get rid of these peasant mobs without taking any damage in return. Of course they're just peasant mobs, but it's still good to, you know, just get rid of them. Now this unit, you can see it charged when there was cavalry of the opponent ready to intercept the charge. But a great thing about them is they're very agile. Speed is one thing, even with these poison arrows on them, you can see they're getting slowed down. But animations and sort of the agility of the unit, how fast it accelerates, is also a thing. And while I don't have the exact stats for that, it seems this unit is incredibly responsive. Here comes the pendulum. His cav was sort of blobbed here. I think if that pendulum had been a little bit better aimed or just a few milliseconds earlier, it would have done more damage, but that's a good pendulum regardless. So yeah, this usage, and this battle goes really fast, which is why I'm sort of going in slow-mo mode, so we can really look at the performance of the Great Stag Knights. This first charge really worked out. The Stag Knights there were able to get in a quick charge, don't take much damage in return. Now, the cavalry he sent around the side did stop though, and is not going to get their charge, and watch what happens. So these ones do charge actually, and you can see Stag Knights over here take quite a bit of damage, but look, they don't start losing models until they reach about, I would say, 60% hit points. Then they suddenly start dropping quickly. So if I had been a little bit faster on the ball to heal them, I think I could have prevented some more casualties there. An extra survivability spell there would have been nice as well. Now Hawk Riders are jumping on top. Hawk Riders, just another one of those glass cannon units. High damage, low survivability. Great Stag Knights are repositioning. Managed to dodge that Chalice of Potions, and yeah, they're just really quickly killing these paladins. Paladins always used to be a big problem for Wood Elves. Maybe they still are, but at least now you have a unit that can sort of pin them and kill them. Although I'm not sure if I would recommend Great Stag Knights in this matchup. That armor piercing damage is nice, but yeah, as I said, fighting Grail Knights, which aren't in this battle, but which you're really likely to face, that would, yeah, not be a lot of fun. So here, the Stag Knights, they go on to the next target. I'm sort of playing them like a chariot here, while the main line is sort of getting mulched by the Knights Errant and Battle Pilgrims and everything else. And yeah, I just want to clear this pocket, but I think this is a mistake, because these are the Knights of the Lionheart, and they're sort of semi-Grail Knights, I would say, because they also have those magic attacks, and magic attacks, of course, shred through your Stag Knights very quickly, as you're about to see. And I wanted to pin these guys, and then go around the other side, but right here I take another bad engagement, because I wanted to move them like this and then charge them back in, but they're getting charged by these Knights Errant, and I don't believe they get their charge back, and watch what happens. Knights Errant are about 950 gold unit. You can see we're doing good damage to them, but this is a bad trade, and more Knights of the Realm come in. Knights of the Realm especially. Actually, Knights Errant are only 700 gold, Knights of the Realm are 950. And yeah, they are just destroying these Great Stag Knights, because that was a bad engagement for the Great Stag Knights. Same thing here. The cavalry of the Britonians is saturated in their own men-at-arms and fighting these Great Stag Knights who don't have that support. And I do get a bit of a flank in here with these Great Stag Knights, but yeah, this is a really bad fight for them. Mainline is also not going great. These Wood Elf rushes, built with a lot of Dryads, I mean, kind of not too scary, because Dryads, they're a cost-efficient unit, they're a decent unit, but they're not a great unit. They're not like a massive unit that's going to win you the battle. They're just a kind of average. They do the job, but so this opponent is keeping his cavalry together, now charging onto this Great Stag Knight, and you can see leaving them in prolonged combat like this, as I was doing, was really bad. I should have kept some units there to defend them and allow them to disengage without taking too much damage, so they could go for those continuous charges, because they don't have the melee defense or the hit points for these kinds of prolonged engagements, at least not when they don't have support. And that was quite a strong Britonian force as well. So yeah, most of the Stag Knights are dead now, and I think all 3 units died in less than a minute, because, well, I think I started out using them well, and then I got a little bit overconfident with what I was trying to do with them, and they just died too quickly. So they really fit that, you know, glass cannon style or trait that a lot of Wood Elf units have, and they just take it to the extreme, of course, because they're a 1500 gold unit with a lot of damage, but also yeah, not very high survivability. At least not in straight trades, which they shouldn't be taking, as you can see. Because Knights of the Realm are not even... I mean, they're good cavalry, especially the Regiment of Renown in this situation, but they're just way cheaper than the Great Stag Knights. They're also, of course, slower. And yeah, because they're slower, they also hit harder, point for point, if it's just a straight trade, where the Stag Knights are not using their speed, which was what's happening there. So yeah, this is still a pretty close fight, because I kind of threw the cavalry like that. Well, I say true, but there wasn't really much I could do, because my army was so one-dimensional. I basically had to fight, and there wasn't a lot of infantry to give support. So yeah, this army is definitely not like an army I recommend you take. It was just quickly made out in the lobby, and just a viewer request. Yeah, someone wanted to see Great Stag Knights, so I just picked a bunch of them and tried to make the rest of the army, or build the rest of the army around them. And so, can't really say much about the Great Stag Knights right now, because they're pretty much dead. But you can see how the rest of the battle unfolds. These Hawk Riders are still being annoying. Riots are being annoying. And you can see the Stag Knights, despite even taking pretty bad engagements, they have put a real dent in the Britonian cavalry. And I know Knights Errant are not the best at fighting cavalry against cavalry, but Knights of the Realm are pretty good, and I don't see many of them alive, so I think even despite me not controlling them very well, at least in the second engagement that they took, I think the Stag Knights did quite well. We can take a look at the stats after this battle ends. For some reason I thought this battle was going to go on longer. In my memory it did, but in the end it didn't. So, Britonian build, decent, sort of lacked the Knights, or the Grail Knights that you often see. Maybe expecting Way Watchers, wanted more mass to chase them down, I'm not sure. It was a decent build. And yeah, these stags dealt quite a bit of damage. 1221, damage value 1081, and 1490. 12,000 damage dealt. Yeah, of course a lot of that damage was dealt onto peasant mobs. But I think the statistics sort of support what we saw there. So they started out really well, dealing a lot of damage, but then as soon as they kind of got caught in a bad position, took a bad fight, they just melted. And I don't think I used them well enough or supported them well enough, but they still got the job done. They still killed enough of the cavalry for me to be able to win with the rest of the units. So that's actually quite impressive, I would say. So let's actually take a look at the stats of these guys more closely, make some comparisons as well, and sort of think about how we could use them better. The Great Stag Knights, I think they're an essential part of Wood Elves just going forward, because what Wood Elves have always lacked is a cavalry that could intercept and kill other cavalry. And that's why you never really saw many Glade Guard was always Way Watchers and sometimes Deepwood Scouts. And then they would try to shoot the cavalry instead of, you know, fighting it up close. Wild Riders were sometimes used to sort of block the cavalry while it was being shot. But they couldn't really expect to win fights against armored cavalry. And now with Great Stag Knights, they have a unit that can actually do that. But we did see that they are quite squishy, and that's actually fine because they have that 90 speed and there's no reason they should take bad engagements. So I think you can get a ton of value out of this unit because it deals so much damage so quickly and it repositions really quickly. But you have to support it and you cannot leave it in bad situations. I was trying to support them with Earthblood. That's definitely something you should use on them. I was trying to support them with Orion, with the Horn of the Wild Hunt, which can really, you know, increase their charge bonus by quite a bit in that first charge, 54%. So they're going to gain about 35 extra charge, so 105 charge. That's a lot of damage. Most of it will be armor piercing as well, so it's just going to be a massive charge if you can get that off. And yeah, luckily for Wood Elves, they actually have units that can support these Great Stag Knights quite well. So Eternal Guards are of course pretty nice, Dryads. I know War Dancer's Ezrai Spears are not generally seen as a good unit, but they're pretty fast, so they could keep up with them and sort of engage into a cavalry engagement where the Great Stag Knights are already fighting and allow them to disengage while they, you know, cut up the enemy large really hard. And of course, Blade Guard with Hagbane tips could also be used to support these guys quite well, or even Blade Riders with Hagbane tips. And maybe even Glade Riders with Spears, sort of as sacrificial pawns that soak a charge or stay behind while the Great Stag Knights reposition for another charge. I was trying to use them together with Hawk Riders, which I also think is pretty good. If the Hawk Riders come in from the back, or even charge right before the enemy charges, to stop the enemy charge right before the Great Stag Knights come in, that can be very effective and do a lot of damage, because these guys have pretty high damage as well. Just pretty low survivability. But I think you have other units in the Wood Elf roster that can increase that survivability. So if you add poison, you decrease weapon damage of the enemy by 20%. Add to that they already have 20% physical resistance, and then the armor, and you're going to be looking at, well, I would say about 60%. It's actually probably closer to 80 now that I think about it. Yeah, because 30 armor is about 20% physical resist, or 20%... yeah, physical resistance or damage reduction. It's not physical resistance, but it's damage reduction. So against unarmored damage, or non-AP damage, you would... if you also poison the unit that's fighting the Great Stag Knights, actually decrease it by about 80%, and then suddenly you're looking at a pretty tanky unit that's also going to be healing. On top of that, you could use Shield of Thorns from the Sisters of Thorn, and the Curse of Anri here to drop enemy melee attack, which is pretty good as well, because their melee defense really isn't that high. Yeah, a lot of good units to support them with, even Zotes with their Flesh to Stone. We'll talk about Zotes in some other video, but they have the Bound Earthblood, they have the Flesh to Stone, they're pretty fast, so they could come in and really help those guys out. And of course, all of these units, the Stag Knights themselves, and then the Sisters of the Thorn, or whatever other support units I was talking about, they're quite costly. So building an army around them might be difficult, because Wood Elves don't just have this spammable 100 gold for 5k hit points unit that Britonia has, or that the Skaven have, or even the Vampire Counts have with their zombies. So your army might become pretty small, and if your army is pretty small, then it becomes more difficult to look for those really good engagements. So building armies with them might be a little bit more of a challenge, but of course you don't need to bring every unit I just named to support them. I think if they have like one support unit, or maybe two, that's probably enough. And you can always go for unit we discussed in an earlier video, which is the Spell Weaver, because they can be really cheap and have all the spells that you need. You could go like this, sort of, and then you need this, not really, and then all of a sudden you have a lot of gold left to get the Great Stag Knights and the support for them. So I think they're a really exciting unit and something that really adds a lot of opportunities to the Wood Elf roster to deal with armored cavalry, which before, as I said, they only managed to do with Way Watchers, really. So yeah, I think it's actually a great unit. You know, I give a score to units every time at the end of these videos, and I'm going to give these Great Stag Knights an 8.5. Now, keep in mind, they only reach that potential, or they could even push a little bit beyond that potential if you have excellent micro. But you really need to have that good decision making and good micro on them, and on the units that support them, because otherwise they could be one of the worst units. It's not like a Demigryph where it has 125 armor and it's just not going to die that quickly, even if you misplay it a little bit. It's actually quite squishy if you don't watch out. As we saw, that it can get annihilated by Knights of the Realm and Knights Errant if it takes a bad engagement. If you can avoid that, then yeah, this unit is an 8.5 out of 10 unit in terms of viability, and one that I believe is going to be used in quite a few matchups. So, with that guys, thanks for watching, see you in the next video, subscribe for more content, see you later.